Welcome to another episode of the Rate a Business format. No, it's not another episode of the Rate a Business. It's another episode of the Ideal Business Program. Today I'm actually talking about the Rate a Business format. Before I do that, I'll just give you a heads up of where I'm at. I'm at a place called, the Douglas River in the Northern Territory. Just enjoying a camping spot here. You can see the beautiful river at the back there. Good thing about that river is there's no crocodiles in it, so you can actually swim in it, which is pretty cool. So this is the location. This is where this podcast is being created as we speak. All right, so the Rate a Business format. I wanted to share this tool. I thought this would be a really good tool to share when I work with clients. It's a useful tool in a couple of examples, and I'll explain what it is in a bit more detail. But in essence, what it's about is whether you're looking at going into a business, looking at starting a new business, you've been approached by someone to go into business, it's a really easy way for you to work out if this business is right for you. Because, part of the whole idea behind the Ideal Business Program is that, it's not just, if the ideal business isn't a specific type of business, it's about the business. The ideal business for you will be the business that really delivers on your own personal goals, outcomes, what you want to do, what you love doing. That's really what the ideal business is. And one of the tools that, as part of the process, is the Rate a Business format. And I'll give you a little bit of history of where this came about. And I might have mentioned before in a previous podcast that I had a manufacturing business, which is one of my first major businesses. That sort of didn't go that well, ended up going into liquidation and ended up bankrupt from that process. It was a pretty tough process. And so I took the time after that to go, wow, I thought that you just get into business, you grow it, you scale it, and all's really good. It wasn't actually a pleasant journey, didn't really deliver, and obviously wasn't successful. So it wasn't a successful business activity. This is going back over 20 years now. And so for me, when things don't go well, I always look at it and go, well, how can I learn from that? And we were looking at that time as to what other businesses we could go in, or what other things did we want to, because always I've been a serial entrepreneur for almost, so it's coming close to 3 decades. So I'm not going to really go and do anything else except run my own business. But I wanted to be able to take learnings from my current, or that existing process and what didn't work that well. And I wanted to be able to, learn from it in a way that I could, in essence, if I wanted to, help me. I guess what I was really looking for was trying to get it to help me make a decision as to, if I'm looking at another business, how do I know whether that business is actually going to be good for me without spending too much time, Because when we look at a business, typically what we can do is we can look at the numbers and go, yeah, it all makes sense from an investment point of view, from a finance point of view. It can make sense. There's no question. But that doesn't necessarily address the question, is it the right business for you? Is it the right business for you? So this Rate a Business format is pretty simple. It's a very simple format. And what it's made up of is, and it seems too simple for it to be effective, but I've tested this with myself and other clients. It actually works really, really well. So how does it work? So basically what happens is and I'll explain it, it's best to use a spreadsheet, Google Sheets, or a sheet format, and you have a bunch of criteria in one column, and then you score it in the next column. And in that score column, the scores that you can put to it are 0 or 1. Very simple. And then what you do is under the items that you're going to rate, you're just going to list out all the things that are important to you in what you would consider a good business. And I did this with the manufacturing business. After obviously we'd been in the business for a number of years, it all imploded, didn't go that well. So then I went through and going, okay, well, what? So I actually went through a process, and you can access this resource. I actually worked out after the event what sort of score did that business get? And I'm looking at it now. It actually scored on the rate of business format. So what I have is I've got 40 questions. I have actually 40 questions that I've put together, or 40 things that I rate a business on. And that's my personal preference, my personal rate of business. Just like the ideal business is, there's no such thing as ideal. When you're doing the rate of business format, there's no such thing as the rating is for you and the things that are important to you. So for example, after the experience of that business, I had all sorts of things that I put it in on this list. And some of the things were, it does not take over our lives. That's actually item number 1. Does not need to employ any people. Can be started and done with minimal cash up front. Will be cash flow positive and profitable from the start. So it can fund itself. Has significant potential to take advantage of technology. And so it can be future-proofed. Can become an international or a national business. So it's got wide scope. So these are some of the questions. You can see this. And so a lot of these criteria that I came up with for the rate of business format, my rate of business format, were a result of the fact that that business didn't really do many of these things. And so reflected on it, went, rather than just, charging off into a new business and effectively potentially ending up with a business that I don't love, it's not ideal for me, I can actually incorporate my learnings and my preferences in this format. So through these 40 criteria, when I actually applied it to the manufacturing business, it only scored 10. So it had a score of 25%, which sort of indicated that, I guess, it's easier to create a list like this after you've been in a not so pleasant business, one that hasn't worked for you. And there's lots of learnings. Obviously, everyone says it's 20/20 hindsight, but some of the things that are important to me and what I've incorporated in future businesses that I do, my current businesses, were really from the learnings of things that didn't go that well. But I wanted to be able to put it into a really simple format. So when I get approached all the time. Do you want to look at this business? Here's a great business opportunity. Do you want to go into partnership around this? Do you want to do a JV on that? The first thing I do is I look at my ideal business, my ideal scene for myself personally. Is that going to impinge on that, or is it going to get me closer to it? And the second thing I do is look at this rate of business format. If it doesn't score, the score that it needs to have is around 80%. So if I've got 40 items, so you might have 20 items or 15 items or 30. It doesn't really matter. But I would really encourage you to come up with a set of criteria. So if you're in business at the moment, what do you want that to look like? So you could actually rate your current business. If you had things about businesses that you wanted to create, how well is your business going against that criteria, which you might have initially had in your mind? And that certainly was the case for how we wanted to do things. And so if you really have a business, and if you're looking at a business opportunities, you might be thinking about a startup or thinking about kicking off a business, I'd really encourage you to see if you can come up with your own rate of business format so that you can apply it. Some of the things that, and I'll just share with you, I'm just looking through some of the things that are important to me, for example, as I've already mentioned them, they need to be profitable from the start and need to be cash flow positive. That's not easy to create a business like that, but there's businesses which, need a lot of investment. They're not cash flow positive, and it takes a few years to become profitable. It's not ideal for me. So that's not a business that I would rate highly. I'm from Australia, and the issue in Australia, we have a small market. 24, 25 million people. So it's important that we have a business that can go national and actually internationally in order for there to be scope for growth. I've had in that manufacturing business, we provided a lot of credit. We had large creditors that owed us money, debtors that owed us money. It was, in the millions. And that's one of the things that led to problems in that business, was not being able to collect that money when we needed it. So I don't want, in businesses, I don't like providing large amounts of credit. That's another criteria that is important for me. Can you, is it scalable? So another criteria is, can you double, triple, quadruple, 5 times, 10 times the turnover with minimal impact on your cost base? That's really important for me. got one here. Is it congruent with our own personal life goals? So do I want to be in a business that conflicts with my values? Of course not. None of us want to do that. So look, these are some of the things that are important for me. You can get access to some of the details. It's a really cool tool that, it's ridiculously simple. The thing about this tool, it's ridiculously simple and it's so easy to apply. And so if I look at different businesses, that manufacturing business, that scored, as I said, 25%. ResiCert, which is my current inspection business, that scored about 86%. And actually over time, so part of the process of setting up that business was making sure that the way that business unfolded, it was my ideal business. So that scores about over 80%. It was about 84, 85%. So that's a high rating business. InvizBiz is the same. It scores well over 80%. So I know that putting aside the type of product, the type of service, the financial return, all those sorts of things, I know that assuming that the business will grow, will build the revenue, becomes a profitable business, it is going to be a business that actually lines up with what's important to me and can actually be developed to be an ideal business for myself. If it scores poorly, 20%, 30%, 40%, 50%, there's just too many things about that business that will make it hard for it to become ideal from your own perspective. There's just too many things. And so you certainly can improve things. And the thing to look at is it's far better to sort of start, if you're going to go in business, look at a business that is going to work for you from the get-go, one that you can look at the model. I guess it's the business model. That's what we're talking about, the business model, the way the business will operate, and what's important to you. I've talked about the 10 criteria for determining how ideal your business is, and this is a complementary tool to that process. Those 10 criteria, which I've mentioned in another podcast, this is another tool which enables you to very quickly, almost on the back of a napkin, work out if going down a particular path is the right format or the right business for you. It's hard to, you might start looking at this and go, well, I don't really know, like, what criteria is important to me. You just got to start somewhere. So the best place to start is you might come up with 10 or 15 or 20 items. You might want to do some research around businesses, and you might have done that, have read different books about business, different business models. You might, probably the most important thing is the business that you start and you grow and you evolve, is it going to really, truly support what you want to do personally? And as I've mentioned before in this series, it's not, every business, if you can start it in 3 years, 4 years time, exit with a multi-million-dollar payout, you're going to go, well, I've achieved my goals. But the reality is that that's not the case for the majority of businesses. So going with that view that I'm just going to go super hard, it's going to become a big business, I'm going to sell it or I'm going to make lots of profits, that's great in theory, but the reality is that it's not what business is like. So I would be really sort of setting up an idea that business is a long-term process. It's great if that can happen. If you've come across a great idea, you can grow it fast, grow it big, get some investment, exit, make a ton of cash on it, fantastic. But that's not actually always going to happen. So you need to have a plan and an approach and a type of business that you are going to be passionate about, that you are going to love, and it's going to be something that you're going to, I guess at the end of the day, it's going to be something that you're really going to be able to consider ideal for you and something that's going to line up with your own personal goals. So hopefully this was a useful episode. It's a simple tool. I've shared it with a lot of people, and it's really worth thinking about the tool. If you're thinking about going into business, you're in business at the moment, having a very simple rate of business format structure that you can implement will potentially stop you making some terrible decisions or not ideal or optimal decisions about which sort of business you can go into. Thanks for listening. Catch up with you in the new episode, another episode in the future. Ciao for now.